Our scripture lesson today comes from a very familiar and beloved psalm, Psalm 23, and I invite you to follow along with me at home. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. Today we are going to be talking about fear. Most everybody is afraid of something at some time or another, but some people have very strong and significant fears, or what we call phobias. So today we're going to play a little game, and from your house I invite you to guess what this phobia is. The first one is called omphallophobia. Omphallophobia. Let me give you just a second. Omphallophobia is a fear of belly buttons. Our second one is amethyphobia. Amethyphobia is a fear of dust. And then we have anthophobia, which is difficult for all of those folks celebrating Mother's Day today. Anthophobia is a fear of flowers. And then we have pentherophobia. And pentherophobia is a fear of mother-in-laws. So those are kind of the more uncommon phobias that are out there, but we also have some really common phobias that you may be able to identify or relate to more, such as selacophobia, which is a fear of sharks. I have two brothers who refuse to get in the ocean because they think it is riddled with sharks, and maybe they're right. Then we have ophidiophobia. I am butchering these words. Ophidiophobia, which is a fear of snakes. And then we have soteriophobia, which is a fear of depending on others. And algophobia, which is a fear of pain. So for fear, there is an actual physical response. It's not something that's all in your head. It's something that takes over your body, and it's a real reaction that causes our bodies to go haywire. There is a fight or flight response that happens when we are afraid. So I remember when I was up in Jefferson and I was the director of Christian education and terrified of talking in front of people. And so Stephen and I would be sitting in the pews with the rest of the congregation, and we'd be singing our opening hymn, and I knew that announcement time was coming soon, and my palms would start getting sweaty, and my heart would begin to race, and I would be short of breath, and I remember taking a deep breath, and Stephen just putting his hand on me like, calm down, it is okay, before I had to get up to talk. There's a physical reaction when we are afraid. It is due to the activation of a small walnut-sized structure in the forebrain called the amygdala. And the amygdala produces hormones that sends out a signal to the adrenal gland, which releases cortisol to deal with stress. So there's this whole physiological reaction when we are afraid. Now, fear can be helpful too. We live in bear country. So naturally, if we have a bear that's coming our way, when that adrenaline kicks in, that's a good thing. Because if you are running from a bear, you need something to kickstart and get on down the road. But there are other times when, if we are driving and there's a near accident or anything like that, that burst of adrenaline can be a good thing. But what happens if your body is in haywire all the time? When we are feeling fearful all the time, or we're having this kind of physical reaction all the time, it creates constant anxiety. And anxiety is a period of prolonged fear or worry, and it has all sorts of physical symptoms like heart palpitations and fatigue and nausea and chest pain, shortness of breath, stomach aches. Probably a lot of you guys know exactly what increased anxiety feels like, because at some point or another you felt it in your own life. There's all sorts of reasons for that. It may be exams, it may be that you have increased anxiety when you're in large crowds, we're talking in front of people, and it's difficult because it puts wear and tear on your bodies after a while. It leads to all sorts of health problems if you get ulcers or arthritis or migraines, a lot of those things that are tied to a state of heightened anxiety, which just takes a toll after a while. So living in constant state of fear and anxiety can take away from your quality of life. Fear, whether it's a fear of failure or fear of people or fear of getting hurt, can prevent us from living faithful Christian lives. In this season right now, there is a lot of fear going on. We're living in a season that is absolutely ripe for fear. People are afraid of the unknown. For many, their day-to-day lives have been completely interrupted and it's been replaced with the unfamiliar. People are afraid for their health. People are afraid for their jobs and the economy. People are afraid for their family, their relationships with friends. People are afraid for the future. And that fight or flight response kicks in to high gear during these times. So when you have a fight or flight response, people tend to hunker down, becoming anxious and withdrawn if they've got that flight response, and all of a sudden everything appears risky and they shift into a real passive mode or withdrawn mode. Or in a fight mode, people become very distrustful of others and the intentions of other people, and they get very aggressive and belligerent, accusative, and even violent, all stemming from fear. And rather than retreating, those who have that fight mode are going to start lashing out. Now, both of these fight or flight reactions have painful effects on relationships and entire communities, as many of us have seen. We've seen that play out in incredibly heartbreaking ways and even deadly ways in the last couple months, as people who are encased in fear make terrible decisions that can have deadly consequences. When we act out of fear, we become irrational. We become defensive and aggressive and unloving, none of which demonstrates the life of a Christ follower. We all have times when we are afraid, but the key is not to let that fear rule our lives. Now, the power of the psalm that we read today is that it speaks to that fear. The psalmist, David, boldly declares that even through the darkest valley, even in the shadow of death itself, he won't be afraid because God is with him. Now, this may be one reason that this psalm is so popular at funerals, because death is often one of the scariest things people face. And when we say goodbye to a loved one, people can be left with questions and pain, wondering where that person is and if they are okay and if they'll ever see them again. There is that great unknown. And with the unknown, we are forced to face our own mortality as well. So we know up here, we know in our head, we know that our time here is limited, it's temporary, we know that we are mortal. And when we face that great enemy of death, will we be abandoned or lost? The good news is that our faith speaks to a God who offers the hope of resurrection. We are Easter people. We are in the season of Easter, and that season of Easter extends forever because Jesus Christ is risen. And that even in the face of death, we need not be afraid because God walks with us then too. God walks with us, and we are never abandoned, and we are never left to face a hopeless grave. We can face a grave, even a grave, with courage, knowing that Jesus himself conquered the grave, and in his death and resurrection, we find our new life too. Thank God. No wonder we proclaim this song with confidence and with hope at funerals. It speaks to a God who never leaves us behind, not 1 minute. Our God who takes away the fear of even the thing that many fear most, our own mortality. There is no evil that we should fear, for God's comfort and peace will always be with us. God is always with us. From the quiet, peaceful waters and joyful times of our lives to the darkest nights, to the shadowy times of pain and confusion. All ends of the spectrum, all times of life, God is always with us, guiding us upon our path. Then you can be free from the paralyzing power of fear. There may be times and situations. That doesn't mean that you are going to be careless. It doesn't mean that you are going to just completely dismiss fearful situations or that you'll never be afraid again. All of us have times of fear, and there may be situations that pop up in your life when you're going to get scared. In fact, there probably are going to be situations when you're scared. It's going to be something like a pop quiz to a big thunderstorm, a final exam, or a diagnosis that you weren't expecting, or an uncertain financial future. But we don't have to live in that state of fear. We walk through those dark places confidently because God is with us. The God of all of creation, the God who formed you, the God who is with you, the God who is the God of the resurrection, is the one who is walking with you through those times. So we acknowledge the situation, we acknowledge the fear that it brings, but we then turn to God, who will exchange that perfect peace and strength for that fear. And we allow God to transform us into ones who fear less. That takes time, that takes prayer, that takes leaning into the presence of a relationship with God. In Romans 8:15, it says, "The Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again." Wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful to live a life that isn't chained down by the shackles of fear? There is this incredible surfer named Dave Kalama who surfs these giant waves in Hawaii. They're like 60 feet tall. And he says this in The Joy of Fear. He says, "I try not to give fear too much power or too much concern, because fear, in a physical sense, is a tightening up of the body, preparing itself for impact or some kind of attack. And that's exactly the opposite reaction that you want to have, because you want your mind to stay supple and clear so that you can constantly monitor what's coming at you and be able to react to it spontaneously." The point is, don't let fear cripple you. Acknowledge it. But then don't let it take over your body and your life. Don't let it take you hostage. Remember that our God who loves you is right alongside with you. Lots of people have fear of things, spiders, roller coasters, the water, thunderstorms, but oftentimes it is the deeper fears that burrow into our hearts that keep us from living the lives that God is calling us to live. A fear of new things, or a fear of change. Fear of abandonment. A fear of betrayal. A fear of losing control, or a fear of the unknown. So no matter what you face, don't fear because God is with you. And when God is present, when you are assured of his presence with you, then you can leave fear behind. And the God, the creator of all things, the shepherd, the one who walks with us, who cares for us, who guides us, will be with us. And we need reminders along the way that when God is present, we don't need to be afraid. When is God present? All the time. When we feel alone, God is with us. When we are trying something new, God is with us. When someone who we trusted hurts us, God is with us. When we are disappointed, God is with us. When we are sick, God is with us. When we are worn out, God is with us. When bad things happen to good people, God is with us. When everything seems to be changing, God is with us. When we are afraid, God is with us. So fear not. Fear not, because God is with us. And when is God with us? All the time. Thanks be to God. Amen.